A few months back, I put out a video looking at the Outer Limits episode Soldier, and in that video we briefly discussed the lawsuit Harlan Ellison threatened James Cameron with over what he considered to be plagiarism. Now, I didn't expect the firestorm that erupted in the comments with people arguing over who was right, Harlan Ellison or James Cameron, but one thing that was mentioned quite a bit was that Soldier wasn't the only episode they believed James Cameron had ripped off. A lot of people came out and said that he also stole from another Ellison Outer Limits episode, that being Demon with a Glass Hand. Now, Ellison himself stated on his own website that wasn't the case. He's only claimed that Cameron stole from Soldier, but I figured we could take a look at what many people consider to be one of the best episodes in the Outer Limits, that being Demon with a Glass Hand, and maybe come to our own conclusion whether or not Cameron did indeed steal from this one as well. Trent is a man with no memory, no idea who he is or why he's there. All he knows is he was born 10 days ago, someone is coming after him, and he has a glass hand that tells him what to do.
I am incomplete. I can serve you better if I am complete.
Trent has a bunch of problems. For one, his pursuers have these gold medallions that allow them to time travel. Removing these will send them back. However, every time he does, another one will be sent in its place, so it seems kinda pointless. The hand is also very limited and needs its other fingers to be fully operational. As it stands, all it can do is tell people to hang loose. And no matter what happens, he has to survive. The fate of humanity depends upon it. Trent captures one of his pursuers and begins to interrogate him. Either he's got a skull fracture, or he's related to the hacker girl from the X-Files episode Kill Switch. He's actually part of some alien race known as the Kybans. They came down to Earth and stomped a mud hole in the human race, basically conquering us in just 19 days. But something must have happened because they've taken human form and have gone back in time in order to find Trent and his magical hand.
We were told we have 3 fingers of your hand, that the whole hand is so important. I don't know.
Ooh, he almost let their whole plan slip. According to this Kyban, Trent is the last living human on future Earth. But if this is true, then why bother tracking him down at all? It sounds like you guys won the war, does it not? It's not like Trent can procreate with himself. Like every villain, the Kyban keeps talking and sharing way more information than he really should. He even tells Trent all about the medallion and its time travel properties. Trent himself even appears to be wearing one, so it shouldn't be too difficult to stop him from doing whatever it is the Kyban are afraid of. All they have to do is run up to him and remove it, and he'll be sent back to the future where he's the last remaining human. Trent sends the Kyban packing and sets off to a nearby office building in search of some time mirror, which is really the source of the time travel.
Overnight, without warning, without explanation, every man, woman, and child of Earth vanished.
Somehow, everyone on Earth vanished before the Kyban could kill them, except for poor Trent, who was left to die alone, I guess. Trent's only mission now is to find the missing pieces of his hand and to destroy the time mirror, which will prevent more Kyban from traveling back in time. His hand tells him that somewhere inside this building, he will find an office hiding the Kyban and their time mirror. But look at all these rooms. I think I'd just rather let the Kyban win. This whole thing seems to have been a trap, however, as the other Kyban have been waiting for him and have placed a force bubble around the building, preventing him from leaving or anyone else from entering.
I want the 70 billion future Earthmen, and you know where they are.
That look on his face tells me he doesn't. His hand seems to know that Trent is hiding these 70 billion people, but because it's not whole yet, it can't tell him where. Trent gets into a shootout with one of the Kyban, who looks to be wearing pantyhose over his head. That's gonna make aiming a whole lot more difficult. You gotta love a good dummy. Trent enters an office where ladies' apparel is being made and runs into Consuelo Biros, a woman who happens to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. He takes her hostage and tells her he needs her help. Trent knocks out one of the Kyban and uses him as a means of explaining to Consuelo that he's not crazy, these aren't humans, and they want him dead. Poor Consuelo just wants to leave, but Trent unfortunately has to tell her there's a force bubble surrounding the building and she can't. She doesn't really understand what he's saying. He keeps going on about how they've come back in time to kill him, but why does that matter to her? She doesn't know this man. She's a poor woman just trying to make some money for her family. Plus this war isn't for what, another 1,000 years? She'll be long dead by then. Consuelo instead decides to help him. She says he can hide in the basement and shows him a secret way of getting down there. Ooh, I really hope it's the Batcave. But nope, just a Kyban. So much for that super secret passage.
I'm sorry, it's just that I can't stand violence.
Oh great, we've got ourselves a pacifist. Maybe she should join the general that didn't want to fight the Xanties? Actually, she has a good reason for being against violence, because as it turns out, her husband, who she runs this little business with, likes to beat her.
He did the best he could. Being poor is what made him so rotten.
Yes, being poor is what made him want to smack you around, not the fact he was just a prick. The way she talks about him though, it's all in past tense, so I'm not sure if he's even around anymore. The Kaiban wakes up and he and Trent get uncomfortably close to one another. I'm just praying it doesn't end up like Batman and Catwoman. Trent asks the Kaiban about the fingers missing from his hand, and I'll hand it to the Kaiban, but they did the smart thing and only brought one finger with them. The others are waiting in the future once they capture Trent. Trent makes a critical error when he takes his eyes off the Kaiban for a split second, giving him an opportunity to push Trent off and tell the others he found him. Trent and Consuelo make a run for it, but does he need to have his arm around her waist the entire time? I don't think she's in much of a position to run off even if she wanted to. Trent asks his hand what they should do next, and it gives him what might be the worst advice I've ever heard.
Let them kill you.
I think his hand had something to do with our current Canadian healthcare. Trent decides to take the advice from his hand and allows himself to be gunned down. With Trent dead, the Kaiban place one of the fingers on his hand and now wait for the others to come from the future. Consuelo is held captive as the Kaiban await for the other fingers, though they really don't have any reason to keep her alive. She doesn't have anything to do with any of this, and I doubt she could help find the 70 billion missing humans. Consuelo begs Trent to help save her, but instead his hand comes to life and tells her she can save herself, which is kinda rude. The hand tells her to get a moist cloth, place it on his forehead, and then his neck. This somehow brings Trent back to life, which has me wondering why doctors and nurses act like saving lives is so difficult, when all it involves is a moist towelette. Interestingly, Trent shows no signs of being shot. There aren't even any bullet holes in his clothing. With his added finger, it makes it look like he's about to rock out to some metal. Consuelo tells Trent that more Kaiban are on their way with the other fingers, but wouldn't it have made more sense to just send Trent back to the future and handle all of this there instead of waiting for the others to arrive here?
I can now extrapolate.
What is extrapolate?
Draw a conclusion from a series of facts.
Why does this feel like a bit from Airplane?
This woman has to be gotten to a hospital.
A hospital? What is it?
It's a big building with patients, but that's not important right now.
Alright, so Trent's hand clears a few things up now that it has another finger. The Kaiban want his hand because it can tell them where he's hiding the 70 billion people, how they can get the 70 billion people, and how they can return to the future without dying. This explains why they didn't just send him back and do everything in the future, because they would end up all dying in the process. With not much else to go on, Trent and Consuelo take off, but where the hell was he hiding? The Kaiban is about to put another finger on Trent's hand, but not before giving him a little karate chop. Consuelo comes up from behind, tearing off his medallion, sending him into the Phantom Zone. It's pretty handy that the Kaiban left the finger behind. Trent and Consuelo break their way inside of a storage area, which houses some pretty terrifying mannequins. He opens a window and discovers they weren't lying about the force bubble, but how far does it extend out? We can clearly see cars driving by. Consuelo is getting pretty comfy with a guy she knows absolutely nothing about. Trent adds the newly acquired finger to his hand, and now he's doing a hand gesture I'm not sure I can explain. Go ask your parents. Trent asks the hand what happened to the 70 billion people.
The plague destroys all intelligent life.
Oh good, that means I'm safe. So the gist of what happened was the Kaiban came, humans basically had no chance of fighting them, so instead they developed a plague that would kill off not just the Kaiban, but any intelligent being, including themselves. The humans also created a device that would take every person on the planet and break them down to an electrical impulse and store them all inside a copper wire. So humans aren't dead, they're just electrons. Trent gets upset at his hand because he's not carrying any wire, so where could it be? But are there not wires located in the hand itself?
I never seem to get tired. But I know I haven't slept since this thing began.
I don't know, dying is kind of like sleeping. Consuelo suddenly goes from talking about how Trent hasn't slept to being in love with him. Ah, the classic Stockholm Syndrome. Although to be fair, this does seem to be the first man she's met that doesn't immediately smack her around. Trent tells her he doesn't share in her feelings, but she doesn't seem to care. Ooh, that's gotta sting. Trent comes up with a plan to keep her safe by having her stay outside on the ledge of the building. He claims they'll never look for her here, which might be true, but she also never had a risk of falling to her death before either. While she's hanging out, Trent decides to bring the fight to the Kaibans. I do find it interesting that even though they're advanced aliens from the future, they still use normal revolvers. Trent threatens to kill the Kaiban unless it tells him where the time mirror is, so it does. But Trent ends up killing him anyways. That was a very smooth entry, if only it was the right door. The Kaiban are starting to freak out because their people are beginning to die in the future and they don't know why. The plague seems to be doing its thing. So long as Trent isn't captured, it should be smooth sailing for humanity. A Kaiban with the final finger comes through the mirror, and the moment it does, Trent comes in and starts laying waste to all of them, including the mirror. It's amazing the human race couldn't fight off a race of aliens that can't stuff a double-leg takedown. The last remaining Kaiban with the final finger runs off and Trent is in hot pursuit. The Kaiban drops the finger and takes the elevator down to retrieve it. However, the elevator is slow as hell because Trent just runs down and snags the finger before he even gets off. Trent trips the Kaiban and then heads back up in the elevator so he can find Consuelo. He fully assembles his hand and he's very lucky that the Kaiban are awful shots. It's a good thing she had the presence of mind to move away from the window, otherwise she might be meeting the concrete right about now. Consuelo saves Trent for the third or fourth time, and I'm starting to think she might be the real hero. There's one Kaiban left, so Trent tells Consuelo to go downstairs and he'll handle it. When he meets back up with her, she's very happy to see him, and I can't think of anything that could ruin this very special moment. Now that Trent has the full hand, he can finally ask where all those people are.
And the wire went into you. They programmed you to think you were a human.
So he's not human, which explains why the plague didn't kill him, and the human race was inside him all along, much to the shock of Consuelo. This revelation puts an end to their love fest right quick, though she could still be upset that he turned down a kiss earlier. I guess she'd rather be with a husband that beats her than be in a robosexual relationship. The narrator then goes on to say that Trent will spend the next 1200 years waiting until humanity can be freed back onto Earth, and during this time he won't have any friends or family, which I call nonsense. He just had a woman that was willing to give up everything for him, and she only knew him for what, maybe a few hours? I think he's gonna be alright. As far as the accusations of plagiarism go, I don't really see anything in this that would lead me to believe that James Cameron stole it for the Terminator. There's a time-traveling cyborg and saving humanity, but those things are so vague that they could be mistaken for a lot of sci-fi stories. Now, the first minute or so from Soldier really does feel like it at least inspired James Cameron when he was making the Terminator. However, I have my doubts when it comes to this episode. It is, however, a very solid story. I love the idea of a man from the future coming to our time with no memory, and slowly over the course of the story, unraveling what is really going on. I think it is a bit obvious that Trent is a robot from the get-go, but I think that's mostly because I've seen so many stories with twists and turns that it's easy to pick up on. Now, if you had seen this in its original run when stories like this weren't so commonplace on television, then you may have had a different reaction to the revelation. Ellison's original idea for the story was going to be more of a cross-country chase rather than confined to a single building. However, the show just didn't have the budget for such an expensive idea, so producer Ben Brady went to Ellison and asked him to revise the story and keep all the action relegated to a single location. Ellison agreed with the decision, which is very surprising. I would have figured he would have threatened the man with his life. Instead, Harlan decided to change the action into more of a vertical pursuit, where Trent would be chased up and down the various floors of the building. Most of the action would take place inside the Bradbury Building in Los Angeles, a historical landmark and beautiful building which has been used in many Hollywood productions, most notably the Ridley Scott classic Blade Runner. In 1986, DC Comics published a graphic novel adaptation of the story as part of DC's science fiction graphic novel series. During Ellison's time on the show Babylon 5, where he was a consultant for the series, there was an idea about making a sequel which would be called Demon in the Dust or Demon on the Run. The sequel episode never actually came to pass, but in typical Ellison fashion, he did have this to say. I want to very much write this script, and Joe very much wants it, and I think it probably will get written during this next season, but one never knows. I don't want to promise, because if you promise, then all of a sudden fans on the internet start screaming, well, where is it? Where is it? Why doesn't he do it? Why isn't he doing it? He's late again. He's late again. And then I have to get cranky, go to their house, and nail their heads to a coffee table. Beyond this episode, Ellison has written 5 more stories taking place during the Earth-Kaiba War, with one story, Life Hutch, being adapted into an episode of the Netflix series Love, Death, and Robots. Ellison also co-wrote the story The Human Operators with science fiction writer A.V. von Vogt, which would be adapted into an episode of the 90s Outer Limits revival series and took place in the same universe as Demon with a Glass Hand. In June 2014, the story was set to be adapted into a feature-length film, with writer-director Scott Derrickson known for directing the first Doctor Strange film set to direct. Though it looks like the film is likely dead in the water, as there are almost no reports about it outside of the initial announcement. Demon with a Glass Hand is a really good episode with some great acting and a fun premise. I can definitely recommend this one if you're looking for some fun, old school science fiction. But what do you think? Have you seen Demon with a Glass Hand? Let me know what you think, or if you believe James Cameron did indeed rip this one off as well. Anyways, that's all for today. Hopefully I'll see you in the next video, and stay spooky.
And be very, very still.